So hiya and welcome back to the Crafty Duck Beer channel. Yes, I said beer channel. Today I've got a guest, I've got Ryan, and we're doing whiskey. Yes, I know we're doing whiskey. But like I said in the last video, we are a bar and we do sell a lot of whiskey. We've got over 20 whiskies, and I kind of want to do the what even is whiskey and discover where it's from, what it is and what all the different varieties are.
So far, stayed in the States and we've gone from Sazerac Rye to Eagle Rare straight bourbon. It's probably now about time to take a swing over to Scotland, as this is where we get into some very interesting things and some a bit more we can explain about different processes used when making whiskey. So the first one we're going to go with in Scotland here is going to be the Auchentoshan. It's the 3 Wood. This is the one we mentioned, Bourbon, Oloroso and Pedro Ximénez sherry finish.
Love an Oloroso.
So do I. Rich, sweet, sticky stuff. It's beautiful. Lovely. I mean, you can tell straight away the colour on that. We've gone from copper to borderline mahogany here. Rich, reddy brown.
And where are these from?
So these are a Lowland single malt.
Okay. Close to England?
Closest enough. Almost close to England's northernmost city of Edinburgh, as the Scots like to say. In fact, I think the Glenkinchie distillery is very, very close to Edinburgh.
Dock, I believe, is the closest distillery to England.
Okay.
Again, if you're watching, my brother, thank you for that fact.
So what we have here, and this is one of the largest categories of whiskey. This is one of the most well known. This is single malt Scottish whiskey. Single malt. All that means is it's the product of one distillery and one distillery only. It's not blended with whiskies from other distilleries, and it is made 100% from malted barley. A lot of people don't know what malted barley is. They understand what barley is. Malting is a process, essentially wetting and drying the barley and tricking it into thinking it's getting ready to grow.
So the same as you would with beer then?
The same as you would.
Yeah.
You're turning the little starchy bits it's got ready for energy to start growing into sugars, so that it's plenty of good to go. You got more sugars, you've got more
so
to ferment.
See the old-fashioned kind of
the malting floors.
First floors where they're warm and they're moving them in.
Yeah, and they're all dragging. They have to drag a trowel around and all that. That's actually where the monkey shoulder comes from. The name of the whiskey is derived from an affliction common to maltmen back when we used to use massive open malt floors, and by dragging this huge iron trowel type thing behind them all day, it tends to do a bit of damage. Hence the term monkey shoulder.
Who knew when we were going to do whiskey tasting, it's going to be educational?
It always is. So
I mean, we're in Scotland. How many? There are different regions, aren't there?
There are quite a few. So if we go from Lowland, being the one closest to us, you have islands which stretch around the outside and the top. You have Speyside, which is the most interesting in my opinion. You have Highlands. You have West Highlands, where Bourbon.
Okay. Is that classed as Campbelltown now?
It's just West Highlands. I know that Diageo use their range, and they use that as the signature malt of that area, and Campbelltown as well. Islands, there are some that kind of stand out a bit. So obviously, Islay really standing out, and
the Isle of Skye.
The Isle of Skye with their lone distillery, Talisker.
Not anymore.
Is there another one?
There's another one.
Since when?
I watched a video this morning, so...
Amazing.
It's just released its first ever whiskey. I can't think of the name, but it's only 4 years old.
That must have really irked the people of Talisker. They're very proud of their reputation.
So yeah, they were... the Whiskey Vault again, with tasting it. It's probably on last night's video. The name I lost. But yeah, it was a 4-year-old... The name I lost. But yeah, it was a 4-year-old... First release ever. Yeah.
The only try to get my hands on the bottle.
This is the issue. They only released 3,000 bottles in this country and shipped most of it to the US.
Brilliant. It's hard enough to get your hands on something.
They said for a 4-year-old it was really good and really, you know.
I mean, they've recently, like non-age statement as an example, non-age statement whiskies. It does not tell you the age, and young whiskey has become quite a prominent thing. So Kilo Man, who are from Islay, they were a newish distillery, they started releasing very young whiskey, even at 3 years old. 3 years, by the way, in oak aging is the minimum amount of time in Scotland before you can even call it whiskey. Otherwise, it is an aged barley spirit. To have the word whiskey, it must be a minimum of 3 years old. When you are putting an age on the bottle, same rule applies as in the stateside. It must be the minimum age of the whiskey in that bottle. As even single malt whiskey is the product of many barrels. Hence, this one says 3 wood, minimum of 3 different types, but that can still come from hundreds, essentially, of different barrels. And it is the job of the master blender, master distiller to walk around and taste each one and figure out what ones create this profile.
Got a harder life than us.
They have an amazing life. So that you know when you pick up a bottle of this, it tastes exactly the same as the last bottle of this that you had.
Yeah, but I think I was talking to you earlier, wasn't it? In the pub I won't mention I used to work in, we had the American oak version.
Yes.
And that was lovely as well.
Yeah, 10-year the American oak one.
Okay.
It's just to say that single malt, a lot of people seem to think that single malt whiskies are the product of one barrel. Single barrel and cask strength are the product of one barrel. They normally are produced in batches.
So we didn't try this one. This is the Four Roses, and this is a single barrel. And if I get really close at the bottom, it's got a batch number and a barrel number. So this one, you know exactly where it's come from, who's made it, and that's a Four Roses from Bourbon. That's a single barrel.
That's a good example of what a single barrel is. Where single malt just means it's the product of one distillery and it's only used with one grain, and that is 100% malted.
How big's a barrel?
A barrel is 36 gallons.
Okay, fine. So.
But casks, I mean, cask sizing's up to 36. Traditionally, a barrel is a size of a cask.
Yeah.
And it's 36 gallons. There are bigger, smaller ones. You do get a lot of them, especially when you get into finishing, because sherry can come in varying sizes, hogshead and butts and all of this. So you get various different sizings of finishing barrels. Predominantly, Scotch whisky is aged in ex-bourbon casks. It's very rare to find them aging in virgin oak, as in oak that's not had anything in it before, mostly because it's just going to be too strong a flavour. But this is the Auchentoshan Three Wood single malt Scotch whisky.
I'm interested to see what this is like with the, like I said, with the sherry and the
Lowland whisky. So Lowland whiskies, I mean, out of all the regions, tend to be considered the most delicate.
XR?
The lightest. They're often floral.
Okay.
But that's not what I'm not expecting looking at the colour of this. And I haven't tried this whisky before. And looking at the colour of that, I'm expecting some fruity, complex notes to be going on. It's definitely fruity, which is instantly off of that sherry cask.
Isn't it weird? You go from Bourbon to this, and I expected this to kick my ass more. I find that softer. So soft. Like I said,
the caramel, fruit and caramel flavour off of that.
That's it. It's caramel, but it's really, really light.
This one's in at 43% ABV, so mildly.
No, I feel much better now. So again, like Ryan said, I mean that's deeper than the last ones have been. Can you get a good looking?
Beautiful amber colour like that.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's amazing how dark it is in the bottle.
Now, is that taking the colour from the casks?
Always.
I'm guessing?
All distillates, no matter what you distill, are clear.
Okay, so they're basically going like a vodka.
That's hence water of life colour comes out as it starts out clear. You will find, richer, deeper ones finished in Oloroso and things like that might take on a darker colour where they've been stored in something like that. And bourbon ones, even though it's charred on the inside, you tend to find lighter Scotch whiskies because remember that charring has already had a wash with bourbon in it.
Do they ever state whiskies whose barrels they were? Because that one's got Pedro Ximénez on it, so that one's. But
the thing with Pedro Ximénez
has it come from Jim Beam? Has it come from Buffalo Trace? Has it come from Woodford Reserve?
Here's the thing: because a lot of them are owned by big companies. I mean, so even Auchentoshan, which is a single malt Scotch distillery, is owned by Beam Suntory.
Okay.
So there's a very good chance they get their barrels from the Beam distillery. Strength.
Right, we're going in.
But yeah, we're going in. So Auchentoshan Three Wood.
Awkward silence.
Oh, I love sherry whiskies. The richness,
It's just so soft.
and complexity is, the finish is massive. Yeah, I've always thought with, I mean, my personal opinion with sherry finish, I always get this kind of stewed red fruit flavour.
Yeah.
The oakiness is very good. You're getting a slight bit of vanilla in the background from the bourbon cask. The maltiness is very prominent, but after drinking two American whiskies, you tend to find maltiness really hits you, and it's that
Nuts.
biscuitiness, but with this, the rich caramel. Very interesting.
So they usually say don't, silence is terrible in a video, but I think it just summed up exactly what we both thought of that one.
It's very interesting.
That's pretty outstanding. Let's give you a little look on that one. So I'll let Ryan say it's
Auchentoshan. For ages I called it Auchentoshan, and then I found out it's Auchentoshan.
Auchentoshan, there you go. Distilled and bottled in Scotland. That is pretty fantastic.
It's very complex for a Lowland because they are normally a bit lighter, a bit more floral, a bit more accessible than Speyside or Islay or